Have you ever kept yourself back from pursuing some of your positive aspirations, thinking to yourself that what if it doesn't work? I don't want to be known as a failure, or what if I'm meant to do, something more noble in the future? I don't want to become known for this minor thing. This is a feeling I can totally relate with. It first started as me being careful not to associate with vices like drinking, smoking, womanizing, you name it. Keeping myself only unto the Lord as a vessel unto honor, sanctified and made for the master's use. And I quickly forgot that the reason for sanctification was so that I could be worthy of profitable use for the master. Now, although I was useful in church and I was serving in church, and I didn't dare do exploits outside of my comfort zone. Now, don't get me wrong, I was right in preserving my consecration to the best of my ability. And boy, did it save me from so many worries. That's another conversation for another day. And, this self-image preservation fallacy overextended in that it quickly became a subtle voice of fear and excuse. It's the story of a young man named Jonah who dreamed of exploring the open seas. And he had grown up hearing stories of distant lands and glorious, the glory of the vast ocean. And he has always imagined himself steering, a grand ship across the seas. Then one day, he was finally able, and given the chance to steer his own boat, a small boat, of course, and all to his own command. Excited but nervous, Jonah set sail. As soon as he reached open waters, a voice echoed in his mind, saying like, "You're not ready. You don't have enough experience. Turn back before you embarrass yourself." Jonah hesitated, but the waves seemed to grow larger and larger, even though the sea was calm. He turned the boat back to safety offshore, and he wasn't really defeated by the ocean, but by his own doubts. This cycle repeated for weeks. Each time Jonah would set out, the voice would return, convincing him to retreat. Frustrated and ashamed, he confided in an old fisherman, and the fisherman chuckled and laughed and said, that voice is a trickster that visits every sailor. It's not your enemy, but it's a liar. His job is to protect you, but he doesn't know the difference between real danger and your dreams." The next day, Jonah set sail again, and the voice returned as it always did. But this time, Jonah spoke back and said, "I hear you," he said, "and I'm going anyways." And then the voice grew quieter with each passing mile, until all Jonah could hear was the sound of the wind and the sails and the waves beneath him. For the first time, he felt free. From then on, Jonah sailed wherever he pleased, not because the voice disappeared, but because he learned to keep going in spite of the voice. I quickly realized that the voice I was hearing, after listening to this story, and I was intrigued that, this is something I could relate to. I quickly realized that this is the voice of your inner critic. And when I Googled this, I discovered that it's actually a thing. It's called like your inner critic, or like the inner saboteur. And the truth is that it disguises telling you seemingly true and rational reasons for not pursuing your dreams. I read a couple of quotes that resonates a lot with this thought process, and let me just read them to you. It says, "The saboteur's voice is fear wearing a mask of reason. Its power ends the moment you mask it." And this is so profound, because if you think about it, those excuses that you have could seem like very valid excuses, because the truth is, maybe for example now you're like, "Oh, I don't have the right lighting equipment," and in your mind you have rationalized that, "Oh, because the lights I have, or I don't have any professional lighting equipment, so because of that my videos will not look good, and I don't want to show up as someone that makes average looking videos, because you have a mindset of excellence." And those things sound perfect, but the truth is, if you think about it deeply, you can actually find ways around making your videos look aesthetically pleasing if you don't give in to the excuse and the voice of reason. The voice of fear masks as reason. Because the truth is, maybe all you need to do is to open a window and shoot in daylight, or shoot outdoors. When you shoot outdoors during the day, most likely you won't need any light, as the case may be. The idea is that the voice of fear is sometimes masked as a voice of reason. So you have to be very careful. Examine your own life. What has the voice of the saboteur been telling you? Write it down and reflect on the truth without rationalizing it. The truth is, once you decide that you want to do something, you will find a way. For example, there was a course I wanted to do at the beginning of this year, and it was really expensive, like expensive, and I didn't have the money. And I just kept pushing it away, until like it was like 1 or 2 days to the end date of the course. And then I was like, man, if I have to borrow money, I have to borrow money. If I have to use my rent, I have to use my rent. I just decided I was going to do it anyways, because I felt like this course was going to be life-changing. And when I opened the website, and I discovered that there was a payment plan there where I could split the payments over a couple of months, and that would have made the payment easier for me. And I realized that I didn't see that payment plan option because I hadn't decided in my mind that I was going to do it either ways. Until I opened that website and was about to click pay. Then I discovered that, when I scrolled down a little before that, I discovered that, there are options to pay in what's it called? In subsequent payments, breaking down the payments into multiple payments. And that, for me, drove home the concept that if you decide to do it, where there is a will, there is a way. Is a universal principle, okay? And the funny thing about principles is that they don't care whether you're black or you're white or you're blue or you're purple. Principles will always work everywhere in the world. So I said that to say that become aware of the voice of the saboteur and the things it's stopping you from doing, and you might think, and the funny thing about the voice of the saboteur is that it can be disguised as procrastination. I will do it later when I'll do it later when I am much better. Fill in the blanks, as it might apply in your own case. So that's just it. Become aware of that voice and become hyper focused on deciding that you are going to do this and nothing is going to stop you, and pray about it. Begin to take faith actions, and you'll be surprised how doors will begin to open. And on another video, I'm going to be sharing with you how God works with people that walk in faith. That's another conversation for another video. And so if this video has blessed you in one way or the other, if you've gotten one value or the other from it, make sure you like and subscribe and do all of the YouTube stuff. And make sure you share this video. It's not just about you learning this alone. As I have learned some things from this video, think about the next person that somebody in your life that might gain something from this, and just click the share button, drop it in their WhatsApp, and you might be the funny thing about it is that it's a ripple effect. If one person or two people in your community begin to learn these things, you will see that they will transfer it onto generations and generations of many people will be affected by it. So start the chain. Let's start the chain. Let's create the impact. Let's increase the impact and get this word out there. So many people are finding it difficult to understand what their purpose is, what their destiny is, how they can activate their life of purpose, how they can begin to live a life of purpose. This is what this YouTube channel is for. Okay, like I said, if you gain 1 or 2 things from this video, make sure to share with somebody that will also get value from it. And see you on the next one. My name remains Olumide Adenike for those of you that don't know me. See you on the next one. Have you ever felt like you're living a toothless life? Like you are waiting for enough money, enough resources, enough time, and to do before stepping out to do the things that God has called you to do, but now you are feeling stuck? Let me tell you something, you are not alone, and it's not too late to get started. Let me start this video this way. I read a quote by John Paul Sartre, and he said that I have led a toothless life. I have never bitten into anything, and I was waiting. I was reserving myself for later on. I have just noticed that my teeth have gone. Does this resonate with you? Maybe you feel God has placed something big in your heart to do or to pursue, and starting a ministry, maybe building a business or stepping out in faith, But every time you think about it, you hear the inner voice saying, "Oh, you have too many responsibilities. How will you feed your family? You are not disciplined enough to pull this off, And what if it doesn't work out? You look and that's like, what if it doesn't work out and you look irresponsible, and you can't leave your job now, especially because you have a baby on the way. These fears can be very paralyzing, and I understand. I've been there before, and I'm of course, constantly I've been there before, held back by a lot of these different reasons. And but let me tell you something. These fears are not the truth. They are the voice of the inner saboteur. Fear disguised as reason, and they are robbing you of the exploits that God has called you to do. This reminds me of the story of Moses and standing before the Red Sea, and all he had was the staff in his hand. No army, no resources, just a stick. But God asked him, "What is in your hand?" And when Moses obeyed, that ordinary staff became the tool of the salvation and the tool of one of the greatest miracles in history. You may feel like you have nothing to give because your time, your money are stretched thin, and energy are stretched thin at the moment, maybe because of the job you are doing or whatever. But God isn't asking you for what you don't have. He's asking you for what is in your hand. It could be a few hours each week to pray, plan, or create content. It could be a skill or gift you've been afraid to share. The willingness to start small and trust God to multiply it. The truth is, God is not limited by your limitations. God is not limited by your limitations. Have you ever felt like you are living a toothless life? Like you are waiting for the right time, enough money, or more stability before stepping out to do what God has called you to do. But now, you are feeling stuck. Let me tell you something. You are not alone. And it's not too late. I read a post once that said, "I have led a toothless life. I have never bitten into anything. I was waiting. I was reserving myself for later on. And I have just noticed that my teeth have gone." Does this resonate with you? Maybe you feel God has placed something big in your heart, like starting out a ministry, building a business, or stepping out in faith. But every time you think about it, you hear that inner voice saying, "You have too many responsibilities. How will you feed your family? How will you, cope? Or it says something like, "You are not disciplined enough to pull this off," or something like, "What if it doesn't work out and you look irresponsible?" Something like, "You can't leave your job now, especially with the baby on the way." These fears can feel paralyzing, and I've been there too. But let me tell you something. These fears are not the truth. They are the inner saboteur. Fear disguised as reason, and they are robbing you of the exploits that God has called you to do. Let me remind you of the story of Moses. Moses was standing before the Red Sea, and all he had was a staff. No army, no resources, just a stick. But God asked him, "What is in your hand?" And when Moses obeyed, that ordinary staff became the tool for one of the greatest miracles in history. You might feel like you have nothing to give because your time, money, and energy are stretched thin at the moment. But God isn't asking you for what you don't have. He's asking you for what you do have in your hand. He asks, "What is in your hand?" It could be you have a smartphone, but you don't have a digital camera, or you don't have the best camera. It could be a few hours each week to pray, to plan, or to create content. It could be a skill or a gift that you have been afraid to share. It could be the willingness to start small and trust God to multiply it. God is not limited by your limitations. He just needs your obedience. Now, we want to address those fears one after the other. I hear you. You say you have too many responsibilities. I hear you. You have bills to pay, mouth to feed, and a family to support. But here's the thing, God doesn't ignore those needs. He's the one who gave you your family, and He will provide as you obey Him. Philippians 4:19 says, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus." Trust Him to meet your needs while you take small, faithful steps. I saw a video online the other day. My wife showed me the video. She said, in that video, the preacher was teaching, and he said that if you see a couple, now an intending couple that have been dating for a couple of months, and they love each other, they're even preparing for their marriage, they're preparing to get married and all of that, and if maybe for some reason the husband to be, or should I say the husband to be now comes and asks the lady to close her eyes. Now in that moment, that lady will not feel fear, because she obviously loves this person, and he obviously loves her. And if he closes her eyes and starts leading her away, the feeling in her heart in that moment will either be a feeling of excitement, like, is he trying to surprise me or something? Like something, maybe he has some surprise for me, and in that moment she probably is anticipating maybe he's going to propose, or he has a gift for her. But he now tied that analogy to explain the same thing with, when your perception of being led without seeing what is in front of you, the emotions you feel in that moment is dependent on your perspective of the person that is leading you. Now, if God asks you to go ahead, on this vision that He has called you to do, to go ahead and start this dream He has called you to do, maybe go ahead and start that YouTube channel, maybe it is start a church, start a ministry, or go out and preach. Your emotions in that moment, when God is leading you, you can't see forward. He called you out upon the waters to on where feet may fail. He's calling you out. So your feeling in that moment could either be a feeling of excitement or fear, depending on your understanding of who is leading you. Now, in the case of the lady, her intended husband is leading her blindfolded. The feeling she's feeling is a feeling of excitement, not of fear. Now, in the case of God leading you, you can't see, too far ahead. You just know what He has told you to do. The feeling you have is dependent on your relationship and your understanding of who is leading you. So if you understand that God has designed for you, for example, I read in Philippians 4:19 just a couple of minutes ago, it says, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus." So if you understand that God is leading you to that place, and because He's going to meet your needs, you understand that God is, Jehovah Jireh, is the person that is the one person that cannot fail you in this world, and He's the one that owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So if He's asking you to go ahead blindfolded, you can't really see, you don't know what the future holds, you don't know what destiny, what you can't really see far ahead. You can only see your current situation, and you're like, I don't have all the resources. But the emotion you're supposed to be feeling, if you understand who is calling you out, is supposed to be the heart of excitement. So if you're not feeling that, what you need to do is to go back to the Word and study and begin to eat and understand the person that is leading you, and see from examples from scriptures of how He has led people, just like He led Moses, to the front of by the way of the Red Sea. God led them by the way of the Red Sea, and knowing fully well that the Red Sea was there. And when Moses got in front of the Red Sea, all he had in his hand was the staff, and God said, "This staff, raise it." And Moses' staff, ordinary stick, became the instrument of the greatest miracle in the history of existence of man. So I say all of that to say that you're thinking you have so many responsibilities, you don't have all the resources, you don't have all the experience, but God is calling you out. He knows that you don't have all the resources, but He's asking you to go out on a limb. And maybe another question you have is that, lack of consistency, of discipline. You are like, maybe you are thinking, I struggle with consistency, I start but can't keep going. Remember, discipline is not built overnight. Okay, and start small. Take one step today, and then another step tomorrow, and then another step the next day, and another step the next day. God doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you to be willing. And even Gideon doubted himself. Gideon in the Bible doubted himself and was consistent. Even Gideon in the Bible doubted himself, but he was consistent in following God's instruction, and God gave him victory. So the same thing is going to happen to you. There are so many examples replete in scriptures of people just, going out on a limb. Same thing goes for the only man aside from Jesus recorded to walk on water. He said, "Master, if it is you, bid me come." And Jesus asked him to come. And he stepped out on the waters. And stepping out on the waters, he walked for a couple of hours. He took a few steps, and he actually did walk on water until he took his eyes off Jesus and began to think about, the boisterous winds and all of that, and then began to think. Yet God caught him. So if you are thinking, maybe tomorrow I'll be afraid, I'll now run back. Don't think about tomorrow. Think about today. And think about, make a decision in your mind that today I'm going to follow the Lord. And the funny thing about it is that tomorrow is an illusion. Today is yesterday's tomorrow. I don't know if you get that. Today was yesterday's tomorrow. All we have is the present. And as long as you decide that in every day and in every present, you are going to go out in faith and step out in faith and obey God. That's all you need. God just wants you to be willing. Okay? And maybe another thought you have is fear of failure and looking irresponsible. Fear of failure is normal, and there's nobody that starts out anything without a risk of failure. But it's not the end, honestly. Even if things don't work out the way you hope, God uses every step of obedience for His glory. If you are worried about looking irresponsible, remember, pursuing God's will is the most responsible thing you can do and you will ever do. His plans for you are good and not of evil, to give you an expected end. And He honors those who step out in faith. That's just the truth about it. Let me tell you, the truth is that this is your insurance. Your insurance is that God asks you to go, and you go. There is no better business strategy than following the will of God. It's embedded in the will of God for you. Embedded in the instructions of God for you. It's the resources, it's the people, it's the money, it's the finances. And the funny thing about purpose is that God designed purpose such that it is service to Him in service to man. Let me say that again in case you didn't get it. God designed purpose such that it is service to God in service to man. So all the money you are looking for in the world is in the pocket of another man. Now God designed that. Now let me explain it this way. If you ever see money in your pocket, it came to your pocket in one of two ways. Either free will, offerings, maybe somebody gave you a gift, or you created value for somebody else, whether through your time, your experience, your skill, and that value converted to money, which means they paid you for your service, or they paid you for your time, or they paid you for the job. Now, God now designed that in your purpose, you are to serve men. Now, it's not in every case that your service to God, through service to men, you get reward directly from the person you are serving. But God has designed it such that you will serve men, which is the second way you receive value. And the funny thing about it is that the two is tied, because you get free goodwill with men, and you also create value for men. So it's genius. It's God's genius design. So if you decide that you are going to follow God, God has already thought out the entire strategy. All you need to do is to follow Him. And the funny thing about it is that you might be over analyzing in your mind, can I do this? Do I have all the resources? All God needs for you to do is to what? Step out in faith and believe every day along the journey. Start small with the little things that you have. Somebody said, I have a baby on the way. If you're about to welcome a baby, I get it. The timing feels impossible. But what if God has placed that desire in your heart for such a time as this? What if the provision for that baby is embedded in you, fulfilling and following God's will in that time? What if God has seen 20 years ahead and said, if my son will just listen to me now and do this thing I say he should do, he would have built enough momentum, now, so that by the time when baby comes and baby grows into this, baby will learn maybe whatever it is God is calling you to do. You'll be able to grow together with that child and maybe train them in the way of the Lord. And God works in mysterious ways. Let me tell you. So all you need is to, align. Align. You may not be able to see far, but God is the Alpha and is the Omega. He sees the beginning and is the beginning himself. And he is the end as well. So if God that is the beginning and the end tells you, go far, the Alpha tells you to go far and you don't want to go far, bro, it's like you want to now rely on your own intelligence. Bro, your intelligence is limited because you can't see far. It reminds me of an analogy of that I heard, that says, maybe someone is driving in the dark now, and in the dark, and then he turns on his front headlamp, and then he starts getting angry because his headlamp cannot point directly. Say, for example, now he's going home and he wants the lights from his headlamp to shine from wherever he is to his house. Imagine that maybe he's at work and maybe his work is like 2 hours away from his house. So immediately drives out of the office. He wants to make sure that his headlamp is pointing to his house and he can see his house from a distance. That's not how it works. He has to trust that the headlamp can see as far as the headlamp can see. And as long as he continues driving and he continues moving, the headlamp will continue to light as far as he can see. So that's just the way life is. As long as you keep moving in the direction of your purpose, you would eventually get there. And the important thing is not just getting to that end purpose. It's the person you become in the process. It's the faith that you build in the process. It's the trust you build in God in the process. It's the person that you become, the lives that you impact along the line. The person that your children see you grow to become. Those templates will become etched in their minds forever. And this is the legacy that you will leave for them. They'll be like, oh, my father knew the Lord. My father loved the Lord. My father served the Lord. My father took bold steps of faith, and I saw it work for him. So therefore, in my own life, I will take steps of faith and it will work for me. So those are the templates. So don't limit yourself and say, oh, baby's coming. Or, for example, I can't step out right now. I can't, do anything. Bro, it could be that for such a time as this is why God has called you. Okay, let's go straight to the practical steps of, how you can begin to align and follow your purpose. So the first thing is identify what is in your hand. I'm just going to read from here. It says, look at the time, skills, and resources you have, not what you don't. For example, you might have to craft within your 24 hours. Maybe you work 8 hours at work. When you come back home, you may want to say, okay, before I sleep, I'll spend 1 hour, 2 hours on this thing. Or maybe it is you preparing to start ministry. All your time at work, you are basically breathing prayer. You are muttering under your tongues. You don't have to speak out loud, but under your tongues, under your breath, you are consistently in a lifestyle of prayer. You are consistently praying. And what that does is that it builds your spiritual tenacity, and it builds a lot. There's a lot packaged in you, praying. So what you can do is that identify what is in your hand. Whether you have a smartphone that has a decent enough camera, and God has asked you to start creating content. Start creating the content. Record. You are like, oh, I don't have a laptop to edit. Bro, there are so many softwares right now that you can use on your phone to edit. And they work perfectly fine. And the funny thing is that the more you do this, the more people get to know you. And maybe, for example, you are creating a YouTube channel. At first, the traction may not be there. The more you get better at it, the more you get better, and the more people get to know you. Important thing is that you are on a trajectory and you are on the right lane. So, as you keep building and you keep growing, growth is inevitable. That's just it. And take small steps, like I said. Start with one act of obedience, no matter how small it seems. Whether it is just sit down and turn on the camera, and start talking. Or whether it is sit down, start writing the scripts, start writing that book. Maybe you just uh, shut down for an entire weekend and say, okay, this weekend, this is all I'm doing. I'm praying all through this weekend. Or I'm recording videos all through this weekend. Or, just whatever it is for you, might be for you. Take small steps. Start small. And whether it is, and then pray for guidance. Ask God to show you how to balance your responsibilities while stepping into His plan. And believe me, God will show you how. God will show you how. And then trust His timing. You don't have to figure it all out today, honestly. And just take the first step and let Him guide you through the rest. Okay? In closing, God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start today, even if it's messy. Trust that God will use your faith, your obedience, and the little you have to do far more than you could imagine. Remember, the journey of doing exploits for God isn't about having it all together. It's about trusting the one who does. Bite into life and let God handle the rest, okay? So if this video has blessed you, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share with somebody that might be a blessing to, and do all of the YouTube stuff. And my name remains Olumide. My name is Olumide Adenike, and this channel is dedicated to creating content that help you, understand life, understand the principles of God in scriptures, and how you can align with your purpose and destiny. And this is basically what this channel is going to be about, okay? And maybe somewhere along the line, I'll be sharing my own stories and experiences from scriptures, and stories and anecdotes that I find, and quotes that I find from the scriptures that are relevant to the topic we'll be having conversations about. And I'll be answering a lot of questions about life, purpose, destiny, plans, your future plans, the purpose of God for your life, and all of that. Is going to be a full series, okay? And if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section, and so I would be able to read those comments, so that way I'll be able to answer your questions on the next video. And so like I said, do all of the YouTube stuff, like, share, and make sure you be a blessing to somebody and share this to them. And subscribe, please. And it's the freest, it's free, and it's one of the things you can do to support this channel and to encourage me to keep making these videos. And so see you on the next one.